I don't know. Just the image of like it's crazy. It's honestly, yeah.
All right. All right, we're back. It is COMP 2007. It's summer 2016 at Georgian, and it's week 9, part 1 of our broadcast. I got a couple of announcements to make. One is I've pared down the requirements for assignment 2. That's why I haven't given it to you today. There are much more. I'm gonna kind of upload some. Oh, I gotta stop this server. I'm gonna upload this stuff. Yeah, no, it's because it's your fault, right? So it's in the server. Was doing object oriented JavaScript. So what I originally had was I had this a restaurant idea. So I wanted you guys to make a restaurant site, but it was much more robust, right? The only thing is we don't have a lot of time. So what I want to give you is I want you guys to build for assignment 2 a restaurant. I need to scope out things a little slightly different, right? I'm going to allow you to work in pairs. At the beginning, I was like, should I let them work in pairs? Should I let them get through it by themselves? Work in pairs, right? Pick a partner to work on it, or you can work on it on your own if you feel like it, right? But you're going to build a restaurant. Pick your favorite food or whatever. Don't remake something that's already in existence. So don't remake a McDonald's or or something like that. Maybe you want to make something like Thai fusion with Greek food. I don't know, right? Or something weird like that, right? Do whatever you want to do, but what I want you is get your assets from wherever you want. So if you want to get like a Big Mac and call it like the Funky Burger at your restaurant, you can do that, right? But get your assets from somewhere where you have images. I need you to have images for your assets, both from a large size and thumbnails, okay? And so what the idea is this: you're going to go to your restaurant site. You're going to have you land on your landing page. The landing page is going to be this, what your restaurant looks like. By the way, you can pick some picture that comes from some restaurant somewhere, right, and call it what you want. This is my restaurant, right? Whatever it is, right? Then when you click on the menu, you're going to see a list of menu items that pop up. You can see a menu. Click on the menu. Takes you to the menu. The link on the menu, and the menu is going to show you a list that's nicely formatted, right? And the list is going to be a list of menu items, right, with the thumbnail of what the item is, a short description, right, and the cost of the item. When you click on the item, it's going to be clickable. It's going to give you the details view, and the details view is going to show you a bigger picture with a full description of the item with the cost. That's it, with a way to come back to the list. Okay, so you can't order from the menu. You can't do anything like that. It's just a list and the details without any kind of ability to add, subtract, or anything like that. Okay, that's what your restaurant's going to be built. You're going to have a contact page that you have your restaurant phone number and address and all that kind of stuff. And in the restaurant address and phone number, you're going to have, underneath that, you might have a little map of where to go to the restaurant. I don't expect you to do location services, geolocation. What's the distance between me and my restaurant? None of that, right? This is a small assignment that all I want you to do is practice MVC, and I want 2 sizes of pictures. Like I said, the thumbnail and the full size. How would I store those pictures, for my project? What methodology would you use? What do you think? How would I store my pictures? Should I store my pictures in the database? Some people say yes, right? Blobs or whatever. I don't agree with it. I think it's better to use a link to your pictures, yeah? Right, so you have a thumbnail. You might have a link to your thumbnail, which is going to be separate than the link to your big picture. Please don't use CSS. Please don't use CSS to reduce the size of your picture from large to small or from small to large. That's really bad. Use a swap out. Swap out your thumbnail. Put up the larger picture or whatever. I don't expect it to be fully responsive. This isn't that kind of course. But of course, if you did it and if it would work on mobile nicely, that would be nice. Right? If it was fully compatible with mobile. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. There's not really anything else there. You're using model view controller, right? But mostly I want you to concentrate on making a list come up with your menu items. Why? Because the next thing you're going to do is the bigger project, which is going to be a much larger project, the e-commerce site that you're going to build. You're going to sell something, and it's not going to be sandwiches, all right? I know. You're going to make something else, something bigger. Like maybe you're going to sell Pokemon games or something. I don't know, right? Just saying, right? Who knows if that's going to happen? Like Pokemon cards. I don't know. Whatever, right? All the rare stuff that you can, if you want to play Pokemon the game, right? Or Magic card. Maybe you sell Magic cards. You're a Magic reseller. I don't know, right? Whatever you want to make, or some other kind of, like what we had one, again, I mentioned this before, we had one semester, we had plushies of mass destruction. I have to put it out there, right? They sell, they kind of create these plushies, right? So depending on, it doesn't matter what you make, you have to sell these items. So this is the workflow for the project, and I'm going to give you way more detail with the project in a couple of weeks, right? The project will have not just 2 people, but up to 4, right? I want you to think of the project as a much larger hourly commitment. So, for the assignment, 2-3 hours, you're okay, right? Project-wise, it might be something like 40 hours, right? And that's, you need manpower or woman power here, right? You need some horsepower to kind of, pull the project through, right? Because there's no way you have the time to do that with everything else you're doing, right? So please don't leave it for you on your own. I know some people will want to try and conquer this on their own to make your own e-commerce site. I don't recommend it. I think you should partner with somebody or a group of people that can do it with. So here's what it's going to be looking like this, right? So now you have your e-commerce site. You're going to sell something, and your front page, these are the items that I sell, my products, right? You have a product list, and you're going to click on the product list, whatever it is. You're going to see a groupings of products. Maybe you'll have, plushie accessories, right? Plushies of mass destruction accessories. Or if you're selling magic cards, you'll have magic card accessories, like the mat that you put in front of you when you play magic, right? And dice, as an example, because you have different kinds of special kinds of dice. You might even call them the lucky dice, right? So that way you can keep track of your health and you'll never go down. I don't know. There might be other things you might have, right? An app that you sell for magic that you have a custom app someone made or whatever. But so a lot of accessories. So you have different groupings. When you click on a grouping in your on your product store or whatever, you can choose one to add to the cart, right? Now there's different ways. You're gonna have a list of items just like we do for assignment 2 with a thumbnail, short description, and the cost, plus a button that says add to cart. You could click on the item to get more details. You could add to cart from the list view. When the cart comes up, it starts adding stuff to what we like to call the shopping cart, but when the shopping cart's complete and you click checkout, it transfers everything to a new order. The order itself is going to be kept track of, right? And it's going to add to the ordering system. The ordering is, you're going to have a list of, or a set of orders, right, in the order table, and the order is going to have multiple items. So one order, one to many. One order, multiple items that you can have in the order. The order also will calculate the total amount, right, with HST and blah, 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 right? And when you click finally complete my order or check out or whatever you want to talk about, it'll say thank you for your order. Have a nice day. Your order will arrive in 24 to 48 hours and you'll get all your magic cards, whatever it is, right? It won't really process anything because we were going to mock it up. We're creating a prototype for an ordering system, more of a catalog than anything else, right? But the idea is that you're using MVC5 full CRUD security at that point, and you're going to make your whatever you're selling look like it's really a store that you're selling something. So I want you to mock it up nice. So I'm looking for more nice stuff. On assignment 2, if it's not, your restaurant's not fully beautiful, it's okay, right? It has to look like a restaurant, right? Like the site. But if it's for your big project when you're working with multiple people, it's got to be a little bit more beautiful than the assignment number 2, right? So that's really in a nutshell. That's how the assignment 2 ties into the project. So it gives you a little bit of practice with the smaller grouping of stuff, and then you have the ability to do larger stuff, right? Other thing is that I've been getting some feedback from students, and some people, for whatever reason, still haven't handed in their stuff, right? Like like I'm talking about like assignment 1, lab 1, lab 2, lab 3. Haven't handed it in, right? Or even project 1, part 1, part 2, part 3. They kind of just didn't hand it in, or part 1, part of whatever it is. They did part 1 and 2, but part 3 they didn't hand it in, right? So whatever the reason is that you didn't do that, and I see these people all the time. I come in. It's not necessarily in this class or the other classes, but I come in. I said, "Hey, how you doing? Everything's great. Do you hand your stuff?" Yeah. You look online, nothing's handed in, right? And that's okay, right? Because it's your choice. You guys have your it's your course as well. So you pay for it, so you get out of it what you put into it. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to declare amnesty next week on the 10th week of the course. So if there's something you haven't done, like you missed an assignment, a lab, something, and you want to submit it, I will give you part marks. You won't get 0, right? So that way it'll give a chance to, kind of make up any of the things you haven't done, right? So please note that next week, week 10, I'll open up the floodgates. If you want to kind of submit something, it's better than submitting something than nothing, right? Some people say, well, what about the people who've already done everything, right? What about them people? They worked hard, right? I get it, but what if you want to, you move, let's say your Azure link stopped working. Some people have this problem, right? My Azure link, I signed up and somehow it turned off and whatever, and they've been sending me email, can I resubmit? Now you can resubmit your Azure links, right? Can you resubmit the whole thing? If you want, but I think there's other more important things in life, to kind of do, right? Just I'm just saying, right? And so the ability for you to submit, I'm saying you won't have till the end of semester. I'll give you like a couple weeks to kind of hand in whatever you have left. So that way when I go over things again, then it'll boost some of that capability. The other thing is that some people either missed tests or did really poorly on tests. And I've got some suggestions that say, Tom, would you mind giving another test and another lab? Supposed to be next week is the final lab, and the week after that, final test. Like the little quiz I'm talking about, right? And that's it. But some people say, well, can you do yet another one after that one? So it'll be like the 6th lab and the 6th quiz, and then drop the lowest one, right? So take the best 5, drop the lowest one. I don't know. I mean, it's a lot of stuff, and it's, my mountain of marking is over here already, right? So I don't know if that's a great idea. I'm going to still put it up on, I'm going to talk about it on Slack. I'm going to say, how do you guys feel about it? I'm going to be against it, I'll be honest with you, to extra stuff, only because there's just so much extra work. It's going to be an extra work for you too, right? Because you have to do it. You have to do the lab. There's extra work. You have to do another test. And, it's just more complex. For me, another test is no problem. Another lab is no problem. It's only 2%. But for you guys, it's going to be like, yet another thing to do. So I'm just saying from an administration perspective. So again, the keys are, when I get something, I'm not a difficult marker. For those of you who've had me before, you hand it in, you're going to be fine, right? You don't hand it in, amnesty next week, right? Hand it in, right? So that way you won't completely fail. If I don't get it, I can't mark it, right? So please, get that done. Okay, that's the administration part. Any questions around that? All right, because I know by tomorrow, I think it's the last day to add drop or something like that. I think it's today or tomorrow. So for people, if people feel, what I've seen from what I've looked at from you guys, you should feel fairly confident. If you handed it in, you're going to be fine, right? If you haven't had stuff in, this is where you should worry, right? And you should try and make up that for next week, because that's the kind of stuff that we need to kind of patch up. So what are we doing today? I have put a PowerPoint up online. It's 77 pages PowerPoint for it's not intro to MVC computer and controllers. It's views. It's all about views this week, week 9. I guess I didn't change that. So that's what's happening. Views it's all about views today. I'm not going to read the PowerPoint. I'm going to start off with a demo, right? Just because I think it's better, and we'll start off our MVC Music Store today. I've put up a link of what I'd like you to follow. So if you follow me here, and if you go to Blackboard, you can see that there's a link called MVC Music Store Walkthrough. Click on that link, please. That'll take you to this thing right here. This is what we're going to be following today, this little walkthrough. The first 3 parts we're going to walk through fairly quickly, or first 2 parts. The third part is where we're supposed to be at today, right? Part 1 and 2 was really supposed to be last week, and I focused more on trying to get your lab done. It's okay, you're going to see how fast it goes. I'm going to go a little slower because I've also got some feedback that I go too fast, right? Tom, you go too fast. Oh my gosh, and I can't keep up, and I'm just saying, this is some feedback, and I have to respond to the feedback because I want you guys to be happy. I work for you guys, right, at the end of the day. So this is what I've heard. You go too fast, and I'm trying to get the most out of your class. However, I have to spend 3 hours, watching your video after I spent 3 hours in your class. That's 6 hours. Sometimes I have to watch your video twice. That's 6 hours of the video plus 3 hours of the class. That's 9 hours. Then I got to do the thing. Whatever you have to ask me to do, an assignment, that's another couple hours, maybe to 5 hours. So Tom, I'm spending 20 hours on your course, and I have other courses. Just saying, right? So is there a way that we can make class time more productive and so that I don't have to watch your video, right? Well, my answer to you guys and everybody is you don't have to watch the videos ever, right? Don't watch the videos if you don't want to. It's not mandatory. It's for you guys to help you. And the answer to that one on the other side is yes, but if I don't watch your videos, you're going so fast, you know where I'm going with it, that I can't keep up. And the reality is it's hard for you to go look to your keyboard and then up to what I'm doing at the same time. And if you have an error, this is what happens. You get an error, or you have a different system, different version, and then what I'm doing compared to your version when I'm is a little different, and then I'm ahead, and then you put your hand up, can you hold on? And then even if I hold on, you start catching up. By the time you catch up, I'm already ahead. And then so this is the kind of problem, right? So that's why the videos help. But the way we're doing it is almost like in a demo style, right? We're demoing what we're doing. I want to get you guys to work together to get more of a hands-on look and feel to it, and that's why I do it the way I do it. I'm just pointing it out. So I'm going to try to go a little slower today, right? Only because I want to be able to get people to have a chance. I did this, by the way, I did this in section 1 and section 2, and I know that a couple people felt like they were watching paint peel. They're like, okay, Tom, can you speed up now, right? Can't please everybody, right? I don't know what to do. Speed up, slow down. So there's enough material that you could follow along on your own, and that's why I kind of produced this. I kind of looked at this walkthrough. The walkthrough is a little old. It's from version 3, 2011, but we're going to make it new, right? We're going to use the same kind of stuff, and then we're going to add stuff to it to make it more modern and talk about C# itself, not necessarily the how we do the the walkthrough. So what I want to do, and this is the version I've been working on, is I want you to start with a new version of your code, right? So we're going to go to, when this thing updates, file, new project. One day when this thing goes, I'll wait till it's done. File, new project. There it is. File, new project. And we're going to choose ASP.NET Web Application.NET Framework, not the other two. Also, if you notice that there's some options here, like I mentioned last week, please choose the highest framework you can, but not 5. If 5 comes up in this list somehow, you've got the wrong list, right? Choose this one. Make sure you name your application something like COMP2007. I'm going to call it Summer 2016, and it's going to be Lesson 9C. Now, I didn't share Lesson 9A and B on GitHub for a reason, because Lesson 9A and B was kind of, I got to certain different points of it. And today I'm going to share Lesson 9C on GitHub. So your lesson I'm going to share on GitHub. Okay? So let's press OK. I guess I'm going to choose this one and press OK. And now you can see some other options like we chose last time. I'm going to choose MVC, this one. I'm also going to click on unit test because I want you guys to get used to using unit tests or having them there. And when we do, when I extend lesson 9 next week to lesson 10, I'm going to create a template. We're going to go from 9 to 10. I want to have tests inside of it already, as well as we're going to do the same thing from 10 to 11. Let's also, from an authentication perspective, leave it as is. Leave individual user accounts in this case. Why? Because we're going to make our database local today, local DB, right? I'm not going to host in the cloud. That's not what I'm going to do, right? And I'm going to press OK. These are the options. OK. So once it's happening, it's going to scaffold out the application like we did last time. Now it's going to give us a little bit more than we had last time, and I want to talk about those differences. But before I do that, I want to go to Team Explorer, and I'm going to go to Changes. And notice that there's no changes here because I haven't done anything. But what I want to do is I want to build everything. So let's build the solution. Now this should download any of the NuGet packages that we need to make. Yay. And what I want to go to is Home, Sync. Now this is what you have to do if you're using Visual Studio 2015. If you're using 2013, you'd have to add a commit. But here I'm using 2015. I'm going to choose Getting Started, Get Started. I'm going to choose Georgian to create this new lesson, COMP2007 Summer 2016 Lesson 9C, and click Publish. So this is under my repository. So if you want to follow along for what we're doing today, that's where it is. Okay, at the same time, we also want to eventually create an Azure link, right? Now, there are some issues. I'm going to put it out for Azure because, remember, we're not creating a SQL server this time around. We're using local DB. How does that work? So here's portal.azure.com. And what I'm going to do here is, one thing to note is I've ran into some, I don't know if you guys ran into the same problems, where I have some older projects. What happens is I think we're capped at a certain amount of projects we can use, right? So I'm going to get rid of some of the older ones. Like this one here is lesson 1B, right? I think it's we're safe to say that we can probably get rid of lesson 1B now. Let's try it again. Portal, no internet. Oh, that's bad. Hopefully we didn't kill our connection. Let me see. We're still good. We're still broadcasting. That's good. Maybe it's just Azure that's giving us a problem. All right. So again, it gives us an opportunity to stop the project, right? So if I stop the project, that's one. But how do I delete it? How do I get rid of it? Do you guys know? It's not. Is it through here? Is it through our dashboard? So COMP2007, summer 2016, lesson 1. I'm just choosing one random one. Well, there's more, right? And I click delete. If it's not showing up, you can always click delete. And we'll delete that one. After you delete one, chances are you can build one, right? You only have a certain amount of limits for now for Azure, but you want to wait till it's successfully deleted, and then what you want to do is remove it from your list here. Okay. Okay, let's make a new one. So we're going to make a new app really quickly. I'm going to go into web and mobile. I'm going to go web app, and let's talk about this for a second because again, it's going to be comp 2007, summer 2016. Again, it's lesson 9C. And then we're going to choose an existing resource. Choose an existing resource and press pin to dashboard and create. Okay, let's see if it's happening. So we're going to have a new deployment. Oh. Move these around a little bit. When you move them around, by the way, what ends up happening is it goes into like this moving around mode. Oh, there we go. Done customizing. Okay, the deployment succeeded, and I've got this new site. I'm going to go into publishing. I'm going to choose a deployment source. I'm going to configure my deployment source as GitHub, just like we've done before in the past. And I'm going to choose a different organization, Georgian. We're going to choose 9C, and then click OK. So this is going to go out, do its little dance, go to GitHub, download that. You're going to have to do all this stuff for all your sites anyway. It says it's successfully deployed, but you know me, I don't trust anything. I'm going to wait till I get my little check mark. If I don't get my check mark, then even though it deployed, it may not work, right? So, sometimes I wish that Microsoft would do that. They would say, we're in the process of deploying. Please continue to watch until it's finished, right? But they don't always do that. Okay, we'll wait a couple more minutes until this is done. And still deploying. See, look, add project files. It says it's building everything. I love when it actually does the build online. So it built locally, but then building online, bad, right? Well, again, what I want to try and do is test it locally and test it online, then upload everything or upgrade everything that I need to upgrade. And until I see this working, I don't know if it's deployed. Please check for yourself to see if it's working. If you got a check mark, do you got a check mark yet? Okay. Mine might take a little longer. I'll kind of go over to here and see. Hopefully this will check mark on its own. All right, so I've got my new files. One thing to note that's new is that I have in my controllers an account controller. And one of the questions asked in the test was, okay, does MVC recommend that we do things from scratch kind of thing, or do you think we should scaffold, you know? And I didn't put it quite like that, but the idea is that, remember, MVC5 is, you know, made from developers or for developers, you know, kind of thing. It's made for us to have another tool set to create and scaffold things quickly. And that's why, you know, it makes sense to not start your security from scratch. And let me show you why. Here's account controller. Notice how there are quite a bunch of different things here that's included in your account controller. One of the things to note that we might be able to chance to use today is this authorize decorator. So this is in the controller class. And what authorize does is it says, hey, for this entire controller, any views that come from this controller, you need to log in. Okay, that's what authorize does. Now this comes because it comes bundled with our ON and security and everything else. We can use the authorize keyword. And then, for example, if I want to log in, like here's my, let's go back down to my login. Notice that I can use something called allow anonymous to override the authorized keywords so that I can allow certain views to anonymous access, right? That's the style. So block everyone except for these ones, right? And that's how it works. For now, that's all I want you to think about, you know, in terms of your controller. This controller is massive. It's much bigger than normal. Well, I'm not gonna say massive, but much bigger. Plus, it has a sister manage controller, right? And the manage controller is also quite large. It helps us manage users. So there's one controller for logging in and account in, log in, log out, register, all that stuff. And another one just to manage users. It also needs authorization for you to do that. So there's two controllers that it comes with right away. And then there's the home controller that it comes bundled with everything. We've seen this one before. Okay, let's take a look at the views that come with the account. Whew. These are all the views that get pre-generated with the account controller. Log in, log out, forgot password, blah, 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 all kinds of stuff. Did it complete? See, look at this. Let's disconnect that one. It just happens sometimes, you know. It's like, it's bizarre. It's kind of a hit and miss. Add project files. One thing to note is what I want to do here is let's run this thing. But what I want to do is update my. I didn't have a chance to do this earlier in the day. I want to go to right-click, and I want to go to manage NuGet package for solution. Manage NuGet packages. And one thing I didn't add is all the updates all the packages. Now I'm clicking on updates. Remember what I did last time? It's the same here. So I'm not going to do Bootstrap. Sorry, not going to do jQuery, but I'll do all the rest. So these are all the rest of the packages that I want to update. These ones. But like I said, not jQuery. And when I click update, sorry, so make sure I got all the ones that I want, not this one. When I click update, it's going to upgrade everything to the latest version. Sometimes that helps from a deployment perspective. And there we go. So it's going to do its dance. Yeah, the reason why is because jQuery goes to jQuery 3. Notice it goes from 1 to 3. And 3 is not compatible with Bootstrap 3.3.6. Actually, it's not compatible with Bootstrap at all, right? So that's why we don't want to upgrade from jQuery 2.2.4 or higher, anything higher than that. For now, I think I'm not sure if Bootstrap 4 or the latest version of Bootstrap that's coming out soon. I think it's in alpha. Even supports jQuery at all, right? I think they don't need jQuery for Bootstrap 4. We'll have to see. I have to look at it. But I'll wait to see how this goes as this is updating. All right, so it's doing its little thing. It's downloading everything that it needs. And then when it's done, it's good to go. The only thing we should have is jQuery. You can still upgrade jQuery, but not to 3. My recommendation is 2.2.4 and click update. So that'll update jQuery to the latest stable release that works with Bootstrap. Okay, we've done this last time. I'm going to restart my Visual Studio. And again, what I want to try and do with that is, go back there in a second. I want to make sure that things are working, and then I'm going to add some stuff. Okay, here's the other thing for us getting going. We're going to add some additional files for this project because we're working on MVC Music, right? And what I want to do is I want to add a new folder. So I'm going to add, so right-click on the project, add new folder. We're going to call this the assets folder. We've done this before. And right-click on the assets folder and add lowercase images folder. There we go. Now I have my images, and I know where to get them. Remember that you guys also have these files. So MVC Music Store version 3, you got them last week up on Blackboard. So please go to your Blackboard. That's week 8. And if you look at, there's a zip file that says MVC Music Store. Inside there, you'll find assets. And under assets, you'll find content. Inside content, you'll see images and site.css. I'm going to take my images and highlight them all and drag and drop them into my images folder on my project, which is going to formulate my project with these images. Good. Now, I also have my site.css, and we need to change this site.css file because we're going to kind of comply or conform to the site.css for this project. So here's the site CSS that comes with the project, that MVC Music. I'm going to open it up and edit it in Windows, highlight everything, copy, and then go into my current site CSS, highlight everything, paste, and then replace that CSS with the other one. Here's something we need to change for now, and we'll change even more after this. One is the logo. Right now the logo is at content images, but there is no content images. It's asset images. So let's change this to asset, and Microsoft will try and help you. Assets, then images. You can actually put a lowercase here. If you hover over now, if you have Visual Studio or Web Essentials, you can see that you'll get an image preview, right? Same thing if I do the same with the other one. So I'll go assets, and then images, and I'm getting it already. Oops, assets, images. There we go. And then if you notice, if I hover over, I'm going to get this other image here, right? Okay, so I've got my images and all that kind of stuff. Now you're going to notice that in the CSS, where I actually can see my images in something called header H1. Right, so that's where I actually see my images. Now remember, this isn't a CSS course, but we may need to modify things a little bit so it can work with us. Because if you notice his files, they look like this, and notice that his logo is here. You know, the name of his music store is here, and then he's got his site links up here. Well, obviously we're using Bootstrap, and we're using Bootstrap's nav, right? So this wouldn't work, right? So how do we fix that? Well, there's two things. One, I think the black Bootstrap navbar, if I was going to run this thing, so run without debugging, Control F5, right? The black navbar for Bootstrap should probably change, to white, just so, because the logo is black, right? Unless you somehow can invert the logo to make it white. And what if it was the customer and he said, no, I don't want to make my logo white. My logo's black, right? What are you talking about, Tom? You can't just change my logo to white, right, or black. Can't do that. So we're going to keep his logo black. Let's assume that this is the customer. But obviously our bar can't be black too. So let's change this bar, the nav bar. And you can get that, of course, under Views, under Shared, you have a layout.cshtml, right, inside Views, Shared. And inside there, this is where our site master view equivalent, if you were going to compare this to web forms, would be, which is this layout CSHTML. Okay, notice how down in here, once it finishes, looking at the compiler, you'll see that there is around line 20, there is a link for your navbar brand. So there's our navbar brand, right? So what I want to do is I want to change the application name to the name of our app, which is MVC Music Store, right? But it is. And I want to give us that logo. But if you look at the logos that we get from Bootstrap, so if I go get bootstrap.com, one of the challenges we're going to have, and we found this earlier in the other sections there, if I go to components and I go down to navbar, you can see that there is a navbar brand here. This is where it would go for Bootstrap. And then they give an example of an image, right? Well, the image has to go inside the navbar brand link, right? So here's the link, and then there's the image. Uh-oh. Because the navbar brand link is happening here, right? So we can't use at action link. What's the link we need to use from? Remember we talked about this last week. What's the other one we can use? Well, do you remember? Well, it's a regular anchor tag, right? And then what we do is we put an href, and in the href we use @url.action. There we go. And then it's the URL helper. It asks for two things. It asks for the link text, or sorry, the action method, and the action method would be index. So in quotations, index. And then it asks for the controller, right? So this is the home controller. Okay. And then what we also need to do is, after we've got the URL, this is the URL text itself, we still need to do the rest of the stuff. But what I want to do is, just like it says here, I want to take an image and I want to, kind of put in the brand. So I'll say image, right? No, let's put it in properly. How about that? Here's our image, and inside there we're going to have an alt, which is brand, alt tag for people who have disabilities, and then also from accessibility perspective. And then we're going to have the source of the image be something. Well, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to go assets, and then images, and then logo. Now, it's a little different than what we did. And also what I want to do here, if you notice that we've also got this class of navbar brand, right? So I want to do that here. I want in my anchor tag, I want to still put that back in. I'm going to get rid of the other one in a second. Class is equal to navbar-brand, right? Because we have to put that in there. Okay, now I can probably get rid of this one, because that's all I'm doing is I'm duplicating this one just to show you that I can use a different way of doing it with our URL action like we did last week, right? I'm not going to mess with Font Awesome today, just because I want to get things moving, not just do CSS and Font Awesome all the time. So we've got our navbar brand. We need a bit more code, okay? One of the code we need is we need to kind of specialize. Well, first of all, will it pop up like this, right? And let's save everything, and then Control F5 for run without debugging. So we can see what it looks like. Well, right now our navbar is inverse. It kind of showed up. Look, there it is, right? Not quite perfect. Not quite perfect at all, right? That's number one. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, remember, we have to change that from navbar inverse to navbar default. That's the right way to do it. Okay. We already have in the site CSS, we have all this stuff, header and all this. You know what? I'll be honest with you, I don't want any of this stuff, none of the header stuff. So let's get rid of all this, because we don't want a dotted thing. I'm not going to put the images with the CSS. I want to use the image, so we can get rid of this. But definitely I want in my navbar, right, my navbar to have kind of a padding top. So if I go navbar-brand, I want to have a padding -top. I have to thank Lucy for this one. Padding -top of about 20 pixels. See that? Oops. And let's see how that looks when I go back to Control F5. Again, what I want to try and do is get that navbar brand in place. There it is. It's not quite where I want it. I want it a little bit higher. And we can add in some additional padding and so on to get it higher. Actually, it looked much better before. And also add in the text that we need for this as well, right? So let's get that text going. Again, I'm just adjusting to make sure that it works. We don't spend too much time on this one. So I'm going to go back to here. And in my layout CSHTML, one thing I forgot to do is in my assets images, I want to put next to before my anchor tag's over, it's got to say MVC Music Store, right? We didn't do that. Music Store, there it is. That's a link. So save. And if I go, back to here and refresh, I'll let it refresh now. Okay, so there's my MVC Music Store, but that doesn't look good, right? Huh? Say that again. 20? 5? Okay. Let's try 5. I like your thinking. Anything less than 20 is good. 5 for padding top. Okay, let's take a look at that. Not bad, but this is down here. How do I make it so that this and this are on the same level? I could use, I could specify that I'm targeting this, the image, right? So I could add an ID of brand, right, or something like that. Let's try that. So I could say, well, I want to have an ID of brand. And when I specify my brand ID, I definitely want to do something like, display inline block. Right, so I can try that. Inline block. And then what I got to do is I got to put up here for the image. I can add in an ID if I want to. So here's my brand, my alts. Let's make it an ID of and not solve the problem. Maybe make it worse. But let's see. Because right now they're kind of on top of each other, and that's not what I want. I want them next to each other like this, right? What do you think? So all I did there was I added in a display of inline block, and I kind of put an ID of brand to the image, and then I can control what it looks like. So it's a little nicer than it was. Not a lot of work here. I mean, we didn't want to change too much. But what we want to do is when we look at the actual thing, it kind of looks like it's inline, right? Although the other thing is I'm not going to need about or contact for this one. I noticed that as well. So let's get rid of them just ahead of time. So I'm going to go back to here. And I'm going to go back to layout CS/HTML and get rid of these two links because I don't need them right now. Okay. And one other change I want to make is that if you notice that I have my navbar toggle, and this does a navbar left kind of thing, right? I want to definitely move this thing to the right. Now, if I'm not wrong, from my links where it says navbar collapse, navbar nav, this one here should be navbar right, navbar dash right, navbar right. And let's see what that does. Maybe it'll do something, maybe not. Let's see. Yeah, so the register and login are here, and my home is way over here, which is kind of weird. Register and login kind of appear before my home. But, how would I where do these things come from? Where does register and login come from, these two links? Is there a place where they're being put in? There's got to be, right? Now, here's a question for you. Where? And this is something that I kind of didn't discuss this in the class earlier today. But take a look at this login partial, right? This is a partial view that gets added into the navbar, right? So I push this to the right, but then my login partial, that's kind of weird, right? So let's go to my login partial. So I'm going to go to solution. And then I'm going to go to, so I have a little bit more work on this stuff than I did earlier in class. I'm going to go to my shared and notice that there's a login partial CS/HTML. It actually puts on some additional work here, right? One of them is it creates a form for logging off and all that kind of stuff, right? And here's my navbar right. It does the navbar right already, right? But it does it for my my action link, right? And it says hello and whatever my user identity is. So when I'm logged in, it says hello, right? That's one thing. Also with my register, navbar right, it does the same thing. So it'll push that to the right. So what I might want to do, because all this is being pushed to the right, is maybe what I want is my home button to the left of those. So I want to put my home button to, these to the right first, and then my home button. Let's see if that works. So I'll go back to my layout CS/HTML, and instead of putting my partial one here, right, where I have my navbar right, maybe what I want to do is put this one, cut it, and go to here, and then put paste. If you don't want to do any login at all, you can just remove this altogether or comment it out, and it wouldn't even show the login page, like the login links. Let's see if that does that makes a difference. Because I kind of don't like the order this is happening, right? I want my home and then register login like that. That makes more sense to me, right? So I've just switched those up just by switching up the order of when it happens, right? All right, so I have everything the way I want to have it, right? I have everything the way I want to have it. Now, We've done a little bit of CSS and stuff, and I did it on purpose only because I want to set up my application a little bit. Let's start following the walkthrough a little bit so we can start getting things done. Okay. So we don't need this anymore. So what he does is he talks about, and this is John Galloway who created this, the same guy who makes the book that we're using. He kind of creates this MVC application where you have a music store and you can look at albums and songs and stuff like that. If you scroll down, you can see that there's several parts to it. We're going to try and hit some of these parts. We may not be able to get to all of them, but it'll still give us a chance to practice some of these parts of MVC. As we go down, this is just creating the application in ASP.NET 3, and notice that he mentions several folders like views, models, and controllers that we have most of our files in, right? Let's go to the next. Next. So part 2, controllers, we would have handled last week. So this is part 2. I've just clicked next. He created a home controller on his own. So what I want you to do is, just so we can follow what he does, is I want to kill the views in our home controller. So if we go to our views, and if we look at our home, I want you just to delete them like this. So there's no more views in the home controller. The other thing I'd like you to do is, inside my controller, the home controller itself, I double click in there. Let's get rid of some of these other ones. Get rid of some of these action methods, right? And so all I have in my home controller is my index action result method. Okay, good. So this is it. All right. I'm going to put this up on GitHub, and I'm going to upload to Azure in a second. But I'm going to say changes. I'm going to add these changes. I'm going to say something like updated project for MVC Music Store. That's what we've done. Kind of, updated the project there. And I'm also going to commit those changes to GitHub, so you can always see what I have up online, just in case yours isn't working. You can check on mine. Okay, so that's it. So that's up. There's my MVC Music, my home controller. So what he does here is he creates a new empty controller. That's what he does. So there's basically a controller that's not tied to a model. Now we don't need to do that because when we scaffold our MVC5 application, it comes with a home controller. His does not, right? Or it did not. And you get something like this. You also get a couple of these links. Take a look at this. So kind of copy this. And at the top of our controller, sometimes you get this, I don't know, guide of what the thing should look like. So basically, if I hit home, or if I go to index or whatever, I'll hit this view. What he wants you to do, instead of having this action result, he wants you to change it to a string, right, to test it, and maybe something like hello from home. So let's do that. So let's change the action result type. This is the class that we're listening for to return. We'll change this to string. And here in the review, we'll say, welcome home or something. How about that? Welcome home. There we go. All right, so can we do this? Of course, because remember that this is just a method, right? So our method returns a string type, and what it returns back to the view is welcome home. Now there is no view attached to this thing, so when I get a response, I do a request to the system. My response back to the requested URL is welcome home. Now you might think that it would do nothing, that all it would print out is welcome home and nothing else, but actually it does format it for you on the way back. On the trip back, it does encode an HTML tag as well as a body tag. All right, so there's welcome home. And if I look at that, if I inspect it, you can see that inside there you have an HTML tag, a head tag that's empty, a body tag that just has this welcome home, but it does encode it a little bit, and then the end of the HTML tag. No doc type, nothing else. But it does produce something. It's not like it's completely empty. And we would have expected that to get that, especially if you're doing a Node application. This would be completely empty. All right, so that's what you're getting, welcome home. And so that kind of proves that the routing or the routing itself works, right? How do I know how everything routes? Remember how last time we did app start. If I look at app start, and if I go to routeconfig.cs under app start, you're going to see that this is the route pattern: controller, action method, and then some kind of optional ID. And while like it says, ID is an optional URL parameter. Okay, that's what it is. Okay, so that's the pattern that we're using. And so this is what we're going to be building out. We're going to be building out things using this particular pattern. We're going to talk about other patterns later on. All right, so back to our view. We've said hello from home. And now we want to do is add a store controller. So let's do that. So let's go to our controllers, right click, and we're going to say add, and then controller. Okay, add controller. Our controller, again, is just a class, and we're going to make an MVC5 empty controller. MVC5 empty controller. And we're going to call it store controller. What this does is it just scaffolds out our index. Here's our index, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to change this into a string again. So just like we got our index, right? What we're going to do is, here's some up on the walkthrough, you can see that it has several methods. One of them is index. There's another one that's browse. There's a third one that's details. I just want you to copy these as a code snippet so we don't have to hand bomb all this stuff. So just copy this as a code snippet, copy. And then we're going to go back over here, and then I'm just going to paste. Our browse and our details. Our index basically says hello from store index. Store will be the controller, and then dot index or whatever. And all this is going to do is going to be when I navigate to store, it's going to give me hello from store index. When I navigate to store browse, it's going to give me hello from store browse. And when I go to details, it's going to say hello from store dot details. That's what I'm expecting for it to do. So let's test this theory. I go Control F5. Run without debugging. And when it comes up, I'm going to go to store. This is my first one. So here's store. And it says hello from store index, because store will give you to the index action method. And then if I go store browse, it's going to say store browse, and store detail. We can see that all the pathing works. Store details, that works too. So that's what it does. So all we can do, if we really want to, we can use the string return type. It doesn't give us anything though. So there is no layout, there's no other HTML. But again, I think the note from this one, the take back from this one, this is right from last week, is that we have a URL request, we get a response. And we can respond with a string as well as with an action request object, which is a view. Okay, and again, the best practice for the view is it matches the name of the controller, and it's in a folder that matches the name of the controller store, the store folder, inside the views folder, and then it has the same name as the action method .cshtml, index, browse, and details. We don't have these right now, right? And we're going to make them from scratch. A little different than what we did before. Okay, here's the browse. We want to change the browse. Let's get this code snippet here. And I want to change the browse, so not only does it browse, but it takes in a value of string. Okay, so so it's going to say store browse, and then the genre equals to whatever the string is from the person enters. Let's try this out. So here's browse. We're going to listen for a string, which we're going to say the genre. So the genre is going to be incoming on there. And what it's going to look like, this is what it looks like. This little comment string that you see on top here is what it looks like on the URL. So it's going to be this genre equals to, and let's say, for example, disco, right? Okay, so what it's going to do is going to say this, right? We could say string message, right, is equal to something like, you know, browse, or, you know, store.browse. That's where we are. And then we can put comma, genre equals to, and then with the space, and then plus, and then genre. Now here's the problem with this. In past versions of MVC, there's no return message here, we could have a malicious attack in this way, because remember, we're getting whatever comes in here is coming from the URL request. The URL request gets actually funneled into this piece as a parameter, right? So I can put whatever I want in the URL, right? Whatever, it's completely unfiltered. So as an example, what they recommended is doing something like this, doing a little help HTML encoder that translates this into and strips out the other stuff, so we don't have some weird stuff going on where someone can hijack the location like this by using http://hackersite.com and doing a script. Let's try this out. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to put this. I'm going to run this. So Control F5, the way it is. And I'm going to run this inside the browser and then put in the string. Now, in past iterations, if I did this, so paste, notice that it goes here. What I'm doing is I'm running a script. Here's the script that's inside here, right? And we're hoping that this script is going to go take us to a Windows location that's equal to hackersite.com, right? So in other words, cross-site scripting. The problem with this is, well, MVC's fixed it. So even if I do one of these like this without anything, I'll get one of these, right? It'll say, hey, a potentially dangerous request query string value has been detected, right? And we're not going anywhere, baby, right? But in earlier versions, it would just go, right? It would just go. And so they have this HTTP utility HTML encoder. And it's a safe thing to do when you're getting stuff from the URL. So let's try this out. So let's put it back in. Now, it's not going to make a shred of difference in our case because MVC has corrected this problem. So we could or could not put this in. It may or may not. So again, HTTP, right? And if you notice what it says, HTTP utility dot HTML encode. And you want to wrap what you get from this whole piece with the HTML encoder, and you would be you would think that this would clean it up and it would make it a better situation. But the reality is, even before it gets here, right, when it hits this part right here, it still gives us this message. So even if I refresh, it's still going to give us this message. As soon as I have some weird URL up here, Microsoft's taking care of it already before it even goes there, right? So again, one thing that Microsoft's done really well is every iteration it tries to patch up these holes in its code, right? So it stops that from happening. Even if it gives you this ugly error, as an example, it won't allow you to go forward. It won't allow you to hijack your session or do something else. It's more robust that way. Okay, let's continue. So this is the change that we're making to our details controller. Again, I'm just going to use the code snippet to replace. So copy this. And we'll talk about what it does. Again, this goes on to the details view. So here's our details view. So again, what we're doing here is we're saying this. We're saying, here's an example of what the details would look like. Store, details, and then number 5. Could be number 1, number 3, whatever. This time, instead of taking in a string, we're listening for an ID of int type, a number, right? Okay, cool. Here's the message. Store, details, ID is equal to whatever, and then return the message. Now, there's a danger to this, right? Because remember, even if I do this, and I press Control F5, right? Is there anything to stop me from putting in an alpha numeric value instead of a numeric value? Nothing. I'm a user. I can put whatever I want in here, right? So if I go up here, and if I go to, like it says, if I go to store, and if I go to details, and if I put an alpha, right, and I press out there, then it's going to give me this error. It's going to say, man, something happened. You messed up. I'm expecting an ID of a numeric type, and you're putting in something else. Nothing's going to stop that from happening. Even if, for example, I forget that I need to put that in. If I put one of these, I'll get the same value. I'll get the same issue. If I don't put one in, or if I put a weird one in, that's a problem. How do I put in a default value for this, right, so that no matter what happens, I get some kind of value? You know what to do? It's C#. You know C#? Int ID equals 0, int ID is a 1, or whatever. Let's make it a 1. So whenever if I here in the method parameter declaration, I put in a value of 1 or 0 or whatever, I create a default value, and so even if I get 0 or nothing or whatever, I'll default to something. All right, so let's just accept 1 for now. Again, we can change this to 0 or whatever later on, or some other defaulted value. Okay, so let's try this out. So again, Control F5, and whenever we go and do some of the back end, sometimes we need an extra little rebuild, right? So it kind of shows us what it is. But what I want to do is going to go to the store details and then put in nothing again. See if that works. So store details, and I'm not going to put anything at all. I forgot to put a detail in somehow, or somehow I'm navigating there manually, and I go here and store details as well. Right? So it gives me, it doesn't error out. It gives me a D. As long as I put in a value. Now, if I put in something else, like one of those, that's not going to save me. It's still going to mess up. But here's the thing: any kind of other value that doesn't match a numeric value, right? And press enter, still going to go to 1. Let's save that error, which I kind of like. I don't want to have an error that kind of comes up when you don't have a detail. Right? Now it gives me the details number 1, and I don't know if that would be allowable in certain versions, but at least it stops the error from happening. Okay. So this is what we've done so far, and this covers everything that was on the PowerPoint from last day. Okay, so last day's PowerPoint, it just basically shows how controllers can output, whatever they want, return back. One thing is to note that we're inputting anything that comes into the parameter is from the URL request. Okay, so whatever comes into that is from a URL request, right? And once we know that, then we know that everything that comes out, the return, so here's input, and here's output. And output goes where? Back out to the URL response, which is on the browser itself, right? That's what it comes. That's what happens. All right, let's go to the next one, the next page, and we'll start off the next one before we take a short break. So I'm going to go next as I walk through. Okay, the next one is views and view models. Okay, let's talk about this. So up until now, as an example, we've had our home controller. We have this little home controller. I want to switch back to this one. All right, so we want to move from the string that we had in our home controller. Here's our string. I want to go back to action result. So action result, and then we're going to return the view. So we're, instead of this little string here, we're going to go return view. Now remember that to have it done properly, he doesn't put a lot of stuff in in his view at all, right? We just wiped out our view too, right? Totally wiped out our view. So I want to regenerate our index page, right? So before we've been doing it automatically, and what I want to do here is do it, by right-clicking here on the controller, and I'm going to click Add View. Okay, so I'm right-clicking on the controller action, right? Let's try that again. So I'll show you guys one more time. So right-click on the controller action name, right? Add View, and when I go Add View, it's going to go to MVC View, Add, and now it's going to ask me some funky questions. It's going to pull up another dialog box that says, "Hey, so what do you want? Do you want empty without model?" Well, for our index, our home controller index, there's no model attached to the index. So this is correct. I don't want to make it a partial view. That's incorrect. And I don't want to specify a layout page because by default, if I don't specify, it goes to the view start file in my views folder. And the view start file, what does it do? Points to my layout in my views folder. So this is the right thing to do. Click Add. What this does is it goes out and scaffolds this. I want to mention something about ViewBag for a second. ViewBag is an ugly name, right? Hey, give me my view bag, right? I don't like it. Never liked it when I saw it. Now it's better. They've tried to do something like view container. I think that's where they're kind of come up with a bag, some kind of purse or whatever, something that contains the view, right? Or something that I'm carrying in a bag, my backpack, to the view, and then I can unload the. But I want you to think of the view bag as a data dictionary. Okay, that's what it is, a data dictionary object. And the data dictionary object actually is dynamic. So when I do something like viewbag.title, I'm actually creating the title property and adding it into the viewbag data dictionary as a property as soon as I declare and assign a value to it. So I don't have to do var viewbag.title is equal to index. I don't have to do that. Title automatically becomes a property of viewbag, just like it's a dynamic property. And I could do something like this. Razor gives me a couple of ways of using syntax. One is the Razor block syntax. So @ open curly, close curly, anything in between there is C#. You can do anything you want in there, C# wise. Or I could use something called an expression. I could do something like this, @viewbag.title, and that would be, I would take the value of the viewbag.title and inject it anywhere I want. That's what we've seen that before, right? Nothing new. But one thing is that what they want us to do is just put in a message that says something like, you know, this is the home page. Okay, we can do that. This is the home page. And when my Visual Studio, you know, kind of responds, we can do that, no problem. Oops. Yeah, Tom. There we go. This is the home page. This is the home page. Okay, nothing crazy here, right? But that's new. Let's take a look and see if we can actually see this thing. So I'm going to kind of press Control F5, right? And let's see what we get. Now, if you press Control F5 from a view, like index.cshtml, it'll open the page right in that view. So if you notice, it says localhost, home, and then index right away, right? So this is cool, but hey, where is my stuff? Where is this? This is the home page. It doesn't exist. How come? Well, it's actually there. It's just underneath the nav bar. Right, I'm just saying. Because the nav bar wasn't there in its original design, so when they did the CSS, they've taken away the some of the padding. So we got to put that padding back. So if I want to go back to the body, what I want to do is, it says 0 and 6, padding 0, 6. I want to add things to the top, so padding top of the body. Now, remember that 6% is right and left, right? So it goes top, right, bottom, left for the box model, right? That's how the CSS works. So this is, because we're using, you only have 2 values, it's top and bottom, right and left. That's how it goes. So top and bottom is 0, and then right and left. So what I want to do is break this out into 6 values. So I want to go top, something like 60 pixels, right, 60 pixels, 6%, sorry, bottom, 0 pixels, and right, 6%. Okay. Same thing as what I did before, just adding a different top value, right, top, right, bottom, left in the box model. All right, when I do that, and if I go back to here, you can see that I get this as the home page, right, because now it becomes visible. Otherwise, it was buried under here, right? And I use 60 pixels. You can use some other value if you feel it's better, right? Okay, so this works. I'm at the home page. This is a good thing, and you can see that it's there. So what did I do? I right-clicked on the actual, you know, on the action method itself, and when I did that, I got this little, you know, this little funky dialog box, and I was able to generate my view. Let's do it for the rest of them. So it's going to take us into, it talks about layout.cshtml. We've talked about this before, but I'm going to go back into just down a little bit further when we start talking about the model. I want to add 2 models to my project before we stop and take a break. One of them is the genre model, and the other one is the album model, right? So let's do that. So how do I add models? I'm going to go to Solution Explorer, pin it, and I'm going to go to the models. I'm just going to kind of hide all this stuff for a second. I'm going to go to the models folder, right-click, and I'm going to add a new class. Because models, controllers, they're just classes. So here's my new class for the model. My first model class is going to be called genre.cs. And might as well add the other one too. Let's add another one. So when I say add, again, class, and then we're going to call this album.cs. We got album and we got genre. Okay, cool. For genre, we want to add a property. Here's a property. And we want to make it so that the string, right, it's a string property, and it's a name. The name of the genre is what we're holding here, right, the name of the genre. Let's do the same thing for album. Here's album, except album has a couple things. Album has other properties. It has a string, which is a title. Here's the title string for the album, as well as one other property. That's genre, right? So we're going to say public. We'll do this by hand. So here's instead of int, we're going to say genre, and instead of my property, we're going to call that genre too. Now that means that the album.G genre is an object of the genre class, right? Not a great naming convention, but that's what he's using. All right, so we got 2 models, right? Album and genre, right? And if you look, once we have our models, well, we can have some fun. One of the things to do is in our store controllers, we need to use a using that points to our models. And that's because it's inside the models folder, right? So if I go back to my store controller, I'm going to go to the top, And I need to use a using statement so we can add the models folder as a namespace into this file so we can use it, right? So I'm going to say using, and I'm going to use the name of my project. So COMP2007, summer 2016, lesson 9C dot models. And I'm going to add that in. Once I've done that, now I have access to the models here in my controller. And we're going to start changing everything. Instead of it being like this and returning strings, now we're going to start returning views just like before. So what's the first view we're going to return? It's going to be the details view. The details view, and again, I'm just going to do a code snippet cut and paste for a second. I'll explain this in a second. So copy, details view, right? Go down to details view, which is the last one, and then paste. Okay, let's talk about this. So instead of a string, we're returning an action result. We're still taking an integer as part of our URL. So the top of our URL, we're getting an integer, right? And now this is some funky syntax. And some of you may not be familiar with this. What this is, what do you think, what is this called? People who know C#, what is this called? There's a special notation that this is called. Anybody? I'm looking to Cindy, maybe she knows. She doesn't know? Cindy, oh my God, you don't know something. That's crazy, right? What is it called? Any idea? Copying stuff. How about anyone over there? Anyone know? It's actually called initializer syntax. It's not really that funky of a name. Initializer syntax means take the property title and initialize it, pop in an album plus ID into the title. It's good, but what this really is equivalent to is this. Let me show you what the equivalency is. So just take this, drop it down over here, put open and close bracket, and then down in here, we're going to say something like this. We're going to say album.title is equal to album ID. That's the equivalent. Why? Because remember, this is a class, right? And this is just a constructor, right? So because this is a constructor of a class, we can look at the album, and you're going to say, well, Tom, I don't understand because there is no constructor in this thing. Right now, what's the rule? It's object-oriented programming for C#. I don't have a constructor, but I'm using constructor notation. What's really happening here? You know? Yes, the default constructor. Very good. So what happens is C# and Java generates the default constructor if there's not one that you provide for it, right? However, if I provide a constructor, and because this is just a class, I can do something like this. And I wanted to show you this. If I just say, let's say this is my constructor, right? Album, this is my empty constructor. But let's say what a more useful constructor might be something like this. I might want to say something like, well, you know what? Pass in a string that says title and my constructor. And then what I want to say is this.title is equal to title. So actually, instead of using the getter or setter, the setter for title, I'm going to use the constructor notation. I can do that. Okay, this poses a problem, right? Because now if I go back to store controller, it's going to go, wah, sorry. Why? Because as soon as I create another constructor that takes a parameter, the default constructor is not created, right? So if I want this to work, I need to create an overloaded constructor, which chances are what I want to do is put the default constructor before, like this. And so now I have two constructors, one that's empty and one that's got one variable. Overloaded means that I can have either or as the either or option as the parameter list, right? So again, let's just do // in this particular case. And if I want to put this is the empty constructor, just for our purposes. And you know what? We'll do the same thing over here. // and then this constructor takes one parameter, and then it is the title, right? Okay, nice and easy. Well, if we're going to do it here, might as well do it on genre too. Let's just do that one. So we'll just create the constructor. Will this mess up when we scaffold out to the database? Will this mess it up? Will a constructor do anything to the database? The answer is no. It's really for our purposes, how we access data from the model. So again, if I just do a constructor, there's the empty constructor, I can do this, and then I can do the other constructor, which can take a parameter, right? So the parameter might be something like a string that's a name, right? And I can use the same methodology. This dot name is equal to name. It's pretty academic. And if I want to write some comments, I can triple forward slash, and I'll say this is the empty constructor, and double here, forward slash, this constructor takes one parameter, name. Okay, so that's two, the same kind of thing we did twice, but here's what it allows. If I go back to my store controller, right, I have the ability to do this, and I have the ability to use initializer notation, which is the curly braces, right? Both ways are okay. Now, there's another one we can do. We can do this, right, with the empty constructor, or again, now that I have a constructor that's not empty, I can take this part and put it in here because it takes a string, right? That's also valid. So it's up to you. The idea is it's a class, right? Do with it as you will, right? And this is C#. This is the great thing about this. We have full control over how we program this thing, right? And this is the beautiful thing about what we're doing today with controllers and views. We can scaffold this out manually. Okay, let's see what happens when we scaffold this out. I'm going to right-click on details, and I'm going to add a view, the details view. We're going to go MVC View and click Add. And this time, right, instead of it clicking empty without model, I'm going to click out empty by itself, just empty. And for the model class, we're going to choose album, right? We're going to choose reference script libraries, no layout here, specific layout, and click Add. What this will do is it'll scaffold everything out. However, things to note. Here's another thing that we can do with Razor, at model, and then the name of where the model exists. So what this means is whenever I say model with a capital M, it means album in this context. Okay? Now, just to make this simpler looking, if you really want to, you can do something like this, at using COMP2007 underscore summer 2016 lesson 9 C dot models, right? And when you do that, then you can do this, which is totally fine altogether. Right, now you might, if this is wrong, if I did it wrong, I did. I got to make sure that this is correct, 100%. Summer 2016, COMP 2007, lesson 9, C. How about I build? Sometimes you need to do that. By the way, we can always undo, right? If, for example, this namespace is incorrect, right? Let's undo. Dun, 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 dun. The other thing we can do is copy the whole namespace. It looks identical to me, right? But just just in case you feel that this is wrong, right? That's okay. This is why we do it, right? This is why we do these things. See, it's not capital. It's capital. I don't know. Right? Yeah. See how it turns from green to black? That's not a good sign. Now you might want to try and put one of these there, and it doesn't really matter. But by the way, when I did this earlier today, worked like a charm. Doing it now, that's okay. I'm okay with that, right? Because at the end of the day, it is what it is, right? We can leave it as is. If you want to go back and put it back the way it was. Using, by the way, last time when I did this, like in the earlier class, worked perfectly. All right, let's go back. We can always undo. This is a beautiful thing. But normally what I normally do is kind of do one of these. So I kind of say c.models and then save, and then the at using syntax, right, is not showing up right now. Sometimes what helps is if you just kind of close off stuff and, like remember this is just, it's not perfect, eh? All right, so if I go look at the, the views, and if I look at, if I go back to my store and then details, here it is. Now look, it's back. See, it has this blue. Now it's back. And if I take this away, look what happens now. All I did was close it and put it back, right? So now model is album, right? This is important. Well, why is that really cool? Well, because after you scaffold, you can do something like this, right? You can say, well, here's my view bag title details, but I can also say album is model.title, and what it is like this in the details. You can go album, what is it? Right? It's at capital M now, model for model dot, and you can see that it gives me code hinting on genre or title. And what this, of course, does is it takes the text literal album and then smashes together model.title, and title, it gets the title of the album from the controller, which gets injected into here. Nice and easy. So why am I going to do all this stuff slowly? And I know this is like watching paint peel for some of the people in the morning, but I did it because when you scaffold something out, now you're going to know what all these things mean, as opposed to, oh, I don't get it, right? Okay, let's take a short break. I think it's a great place to take a break. We've done one of these. Let's test this first. So let's test it out and see if it works. But after this, we'll take a short break. I'll put it up to GitHub. I'll test it on Azure when I'm on break, or you guys are on break for 10 minutes, and then we'll see how it works. Okay, cool. So store details, give me a bit of an error. So here's a problem, right? My details, I haven't put in a details number, right? Because I wiped out that little thing we did, the default, right? Remember I did a copy paste in the store controller. Normally I would have put a default of 1, right? This is going to be 1, which is okay because we're gonna generate something here. There it is, album 1. Okay, so that's what you should get now. Let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll do the other 2 that we have to take care of.